Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and Texans, we got another one of you on the damn podcast. Yes, you're questioning whether I'm a Kansas Mason or a Texas Mason. Well, Kansas, but kind of Texas. That's a whole nother thing. But it's my privilege and honor to introduce Right Worshipful Jim Rumsey. Welcome.
We all know that at heart you want to be a Texas Mason. We all know that, and we welcome that.
You know, it's I've got my Teskey boots.
Hey, Teskey's Don Paul Payton, good friend of mine.
That's right, my past master Teskey boots.
Did you get the brown ones or the black ones?
I got the brown ones.
It's because you're a Kansas guy.
You know, I got enough cowboy boots, and you know, I've been challenged before about the last time I rode a horse, and I'm pretty sure it's probably sooner than, or I've ridden one before. A lot of you guys have. So when's the last time
I've not ridden one in probably 35 years.
Oh shit, yeah,
I was a kid.
Yeah, it's been no more than a year for me, so I'm good.
Yeah.
So, Jim, have you seen an episode of the podcast before?
I have.
All right, perfect. So, as you know, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So all the Texans probably know who Jim is, but they really probably don't know your whole background. So who's Jim the man?
Jim is a man who lives in Tyler, Texas, wife and a couple of teenagers. We balance careers and having two teenagers and Masonry somehow. She and I have been married about 4 years now. Pay the bills with oil and gas. I'm an oil and gas guy. I work for a large oil and gas pipeline company in Houston, and that's who I am.
Well, so that's very abridged. So let's back up, because you've left some things out.
Okay.
What other careers have you done in the past?
I've been an oil and gas guy for about the last 15 years. And before that, I was a police officer for about 14 years.
Yeah, see, you just kind of skimmed over that. Where'd you do law enforcement at?
Northeast Texas.
Northeast Texas. All right.
Yeah.
So for 14 years?
Yep.
The climate, I have a daughter in law enforcement. The climate of law enforcement has changed drastically probably since you were in.
So whenever I started,
Yes.
I started for the sheriff's office there in Longview, Texas. And not even a camera on the dash. That's how, I mean, we're talking, late 90s.
Yeah. So
pre-dash cam days to now it's, wearing body mics and body cameras and everything's recorded. And yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah. You know, my daughter's been in about 6 years, and she loves it. She loves all of it on because nobody can lie on her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is. So done that. Did you do a little insurance?
During COVID, we started up a little side gig. My wife
Okay.
and I did.
All right. We do a little research on you, my friend. So I didn't know what you're going to leave out on me. So you share some time in between Tyler and Houston and with work and Masonic stuff, right?
Yep.
Nice. So let's go to the Masonic side. You're a little bit busy. So let's talk slightly. Talk about when you started and where you're at now. If you leave out some stuff, I'll help you.
So started, I won't go back to before I petitioned, what led me to petition, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So it's an integral part of who I am. So my grandfather was a Mason, but he was the old school kind of guy that never talked about it. My grandmother was pretty active in the Eastern Star. I know that now, but as a small child, I just knew she was doing something all the time. Growing up, grandfather was always one of the guys that I just respected. We were around him a lot as kids and then as young adults. So we had every Thanksgiving, we'd go to a grandparents' house for a big Thanksgiving lunch, and it was a little mini family reunion. My mom is the youngest of six, so all of her siblings and all the cousins would always be there for Thanksgiving. It was just a big household. We had a good time. After lunch one day, we're talking Thanksgiving 2002, So we'd finish lunch, and several folks were getting in the living room, getting situated to watch the Cowboys play. And my granddad was sitting at the little breakfast table with a cup of coffee. And I sat down with him and poured a cup of coffee and asked him about being a Mason and a little bit about what it was. And that old man smiled a way I've never saw him smile before or since. And we talked about it for a little bit. He admitted that he'd been out of the loop for a little bit. He was still current, but he wasn't really active anymore. And I grew up in Longview, Texas. So if you get on Interstate 20 and go east from Dallas about 2 hours, you go through Longview. So, and that's where he lived. So he said there's two lodges in Longview, and he described to me where they were. He said, you got to go to this one because they eat better. And I didn't know how important that was at the time, but he was right. So that led me to a petition, and I petitioned in the following month. I looked up a guy, and my grandmother actually had a guy that she contacted through the Eastern Star that she knew, who came and looked me up, and he and I sat down and visited for a little bit, and he brought me a petition, and that's how it started. And I was initiated into the following February, so that was in late November, early December, and got initiated in February, and raised that following in June. So February was EA, May was Fellowcraft, and June was Masters in 2003 in Longview, Texas. The lodge was Pine Tree Lodge, number 1396. Pretty active lodge looking back on it. At the time, it had about 330 members.
Yeah.
Blue collar lodge, just normal guys.
Yeah.
And they had a pretty active officer line, and our officer line at that time started at junior stewards, and we actually elected every office. So it was a 7-year progression to be master. So I didn't go into the chairs for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Then I started in the kitchen there did 2 years as a steward. Then leapfrogged both deacon spots and went to the south, and I served as master of that lodge in 09-10. And it was a couple of years after that that I moved out of Longview. The company I went to work for moved me to Dallas in 2014, and went to Dallas, affiliated with, visited a lot of lodges, a whole lot of lodges, and finally found one that felt like home, and that was Hillcrest Lodge in Dallas. So I affiliated with the Hillcrest guys 16 or 17, somewhere around there. And then
Post Jake Galvach.
Right post. So I joined as Jake was going out. Never affiliated. Jake was going out of the East. But I knew Jake. I knew Kyle Walquist. I knew Chris Livingston. Several guys. A guy named Steve Gooch there that I'd known for years, and they kept pestering me, so to speak, to come to lodge. Come to lodge. I finally did, and Dallas is a little bit different than other places. At the time, we had 47 lodges in Dallas County, so there's a lot of lodges with different personalities to really visit and get a feel for. So even though I knew all those guys really well at Hillcrest, I didn't jump the gun. I kept visiting other lodges, and I kept going back to it. It was the one that just felt right. So,
right.
And then I served as master of Hillcrest, I think, in 21, and then took me to Houston. So I'm in Houston part-time now, part-time in Tyler. And that's about it.
York Rite, Scottish Rite?
Oh yeah, all the above.
Shrine?
All the above.
Yeah.
So I joined Scottish Rite the same year I was raised. So raised in June of 2003, joined the Scottish Rite in September of that year. Makes no sense. Longview, Texas is 45 minutes from Shreveport, Louisiana, 2 hours from Dallas, Texas, 3 hours from Waco, Texas. But all the old men at my lodge never asked about the Scottish Rite. They said, you got to go fill out this form and take it to Waco. I didn't know what that meant, so I did it. So I joined the Scottish Rite Valley 3 hours away, where there were two closer than I was. But it's worked out for me. I got active with the Scottish Rite there on a few degree teams, served as a master of 2 of the 4 bodies, and was honored with both a red hat and a white hat subsequently. So yeah, it's been good to me.
And those bodies, the Scottish Rite and York Rite, there's a lot of esoteric, and that's really a passion for you. Fair?
It is. So I'm more of a historian than I am a philosopher and an esoteric guy, but they
Okay.
all go hand in hand.
Sure. That's fair.
I like to look at the synopsis of the Scottish Rite degrees, then go back and look at, whenever Pike rewrote those, what was he going through? What was he thinking? What was going on in the world to make him, draft those revised rituals from the early 1800s to the, late 1800s. And then the Supreme Council has gone through a few revisions since then. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's the lessons there are fantastic. If you got the time to really delve off into them, and I'm not telling you or your listeners anything they don't already know, but it can be a rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole,
Yeah.
man, and it can take you places you never thought you'd go. On the York Rite side, yeah, chapter council, commandery, all that, and all the invitational bodies that go along with it. Joined the shrine there in Tyler and Sharon Shrine Temple, and then not the most active Shriner over the years. I said if any two organizations I belong to got the least amount of my attention, it was the Commandery and the Shrine.
Yeah.
But that changed here about 6 or 7 years ago, and I got appointed or elected. I'm not sure how the process actually worked at the time.
Voluntold.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I was invited to participate. How's that? And I got a spot on the board of governors of the Shriners Hospital here in Galveston. And every Shriner knows a little bit about the hospital, but it's not until you spend time in that building, see those kids, and the the Texas hospital in Galveston was a burn center at the time, just strictly burn center.
Yep.
And nothing against any other hospital. The other Shrine hospitals and even the Scottish Rite Hospital here in Dallas. But treating orthopedics gives a kid their mobility back. Treating burns saves lives. And it's a different aspect of it.
And what I agree, and what a lot of people don't know about that hospital, specifically in Galveston, because I've been there, is many of their patients are from third world countries that fall a lot in these open pits.
So yeah, I'll give you an example. My first year on the board, I was shocked that we were flying kids in from Guatemala who were burned in a damn volcano eruption. How does that happen even? But we had kids that we flew in from Guatemala that we treated them successfully. And I'm telling you, I'm at the hospital at least one day a month at a minimum. And it's rarely that I can walk out of there at the end of the day with a dry eye. And seeing the kids, it's one thing, but when you hear the mom
Yep.
talk about how, you saved my kid's life. And I mean, all I did was sign off on the budget. I mean, to be honest with you,
Right.
but
But it's the bigger thing that
they view it. And I'm telling you, it's put the shrine in the center of focus for me where it wasn't for many years in my Masonic journey.
Yeah. I've said this before. If I were a potentate of a shrine center near a hospital, the day that I initiated everybody, I would drive all the new guys to the hospital.
We'd love to have you.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have an MPD after you see that. I don't know how you don't pay those dues.
My wife, it was several years I was coming down here before she came down here and actually toured the hospital because it was all shut down during COVID.
Yeah.
We shut down tours for I think 3 years. But after she got down here, and then the Houston hospital and the Galveston hospital, we merged them together.
Yep.
So now we're doing orthopedics, cleft lip and palate, and burns out of the Galveston hospital.
Right.
And Shrine International's invested a lot of money in the remodel and the revamping of that hospital. So hopefully it's going to be there for a long time. But my wife came down here and she knows about the hospital, obviously.
Right.
But she took a tour of the hospital. She came back and she said, I don't care how much it cost us. We're going to keep writing checks to those folks. They're doing great things down there. That's where our focus needs to be.
Yep.
And it's just touching. It really is.
I agree with you. I agree. So a gentleman from a brother from our temple, Ron Capps, was down on that board for a long time.
Yeah. So Ron I knew Ron well. I didn't know he was from your temple. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ron just got elected to the board of directors for the hospital board overall.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ron's a good guy, and we're very fortunate to have him.
Did Jeff Bro take his place down there?
Not yet.
Okay.
So So we've got a vacancy on the board, and so we're capped to have 18 members of the board.
Yeah.
And we're going to be filling. We haven't filled anybody for several years. Whenever we merged the two boards together, the Shrine International didn't make us remove anybody from the boards. We just through natural attrition to get back down to the manageable number. But we're just now getting to the point now where we can start to fill vacancies. So yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good deal.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be interesting. So let's get into some other things. So if all goes well in 2026, you should be the Grand Master of Texas.
I should be the Grand Master of Masons in Texas.
Okay. So I always add that in there.
Yeah.
Because it gets a little wild in Texas every once in a while. So you just never know. So we'll just leave it at that. So I'm just going to speak for me because I'm a Kansas Mason. I think you're going to kill it. I can't wait for you to get into the Grand East. I think it's well earned, my friend, but that's just me.
Well, I appreciate it.
I say all of that for Grandmaster. Let's fast forward. It's 2 years in advance. And I say, Grandmaster Jim, why aren't more men joining Masonry today? What's your answer? Why aren't more men joining?
Because our organization as it currently is not attractive to them.
Is it an old message?
No, it's we don't have a membership problem. We don't have a marketing problem necessarily. I think we truly have a money problem. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In Texas, we've got about 58,000 Master Masons. We've got about 747 lodges. If you look at the historical graph, we peaked in 62 and we've been on decline since then. So at some point on the outside, we had 58,000 Masons. So if you go back and find that year's 1914. That year they added 3,000 members and added half a dozen lodges. So what were they doing differently then than we were doing now? And then there's a lot. There's a lot that we've changed over the years. But the big piece of that, I really believe, is that we never recovered as an institution after the Great Depression financially. After the war, World War II, the post-war economy was doing well. My grandfather's generation kind of changed the fraternity from a dark, philosophic, exclusive organization into you and I work together at the Ford plant. We grill burgers at each other's house this weekend. We live in this new suburb together. We bowl together on Tuesdays. Why don't you come hang out with me on Thursday at the lodge? So in the 50s, Freemasonry, at least in Texas, kind of transitioned to more of a social organization than it had been. And with that come a vast influx of members. So quantity, if you got 200, I think we just shy of 250,000 in 62. So let's say 200,000 guys, paying $20 a year. Well, that's a lot at the time.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's look at 1914. Now, granted, we weren't competing with everything we're competing with today, primarily the internet and television and extracurricular activities with kids. But if you wanted to join a lodge in 1914, you had to save and invest into joining that lodge.
Yep.
In Texas today, the average cost of a degree fee, we charge fees for all 3 degrees. I don't know how Kansas does it, but the average degree fee in Texas is in the range of $75 to $100. In 1914, if you adjust for inflation, you were paying $838 per degree, and you weren't making near that. So you were saving and investing to join the lodge because it meant something. We don't attract the same caliber of man we used to either, and it's because we have become inclusive and not exclusive. You can ask any Mason. I shouldn't say that. You can ask most lodges in small towns. And the average town in Texas is 2,000 people. So you take out the Houstons, the Dallases, the Austins. You look at an average town or small city lodge. They're going to tell you they're competing with the guys who have kids in Little League Baseball. They're competing with the Lions Club, the Kiwanis Club, whatever. None of them are going to tell you they're competing with the country club, which is what we should be competing with, what we were considered to be competing with
Right.
prior to the Depression. So we've marketed ourselves to be a blue collar social organization that's inclusive, and that inclusivity worked for our grandparents' generation in the 50s and 60s. It doesn't work for the young men coming up now. They want to go back. They're looking for something masculine and something exclusive, and we've got to shift. There has to be a paradigm shift to us to get back to where we can attract those top men. And also, I don't know how it is in Kansas. You go to any small town lodge in Texas, you drive by their building, most of them aren't maintained in a manner that's going to want a 25-year-old kid to go knock on the door and
Not
see what's going on
inviting.
inside. Yeah. So and it all comes down to we've got a money issue and a personality issue. And membership numbers are a symptom of that and not an independent issue.
That's interesting. It just threw me to this next question that I had there. So anybody that watches this episode, this podcast, they're saying, here it comes. This is Bird's rant. Here's what he's about to do. Most people think the brand is the square and compasses and all that. The brand is the member.
The man.
So our brand, I believe our brand, the man, is tarnished. We have raised the bar to let people get under or lowered the bar. It's not exclusive anymore. This will be when the comments are coming up. There's Bird. He's an elitist. I do think Masons should be an elite organization.
I'm
And
not going to.
elite doesn't mean money.
No,
Elite means
exclusive.
caliber.
Exclusive. We should be. We are always have been until the last half of the 21st century, or last half of the 20th century. I'm sorry. Been an exclusive organization. We became inclusive, like I said, with my granddad's generation, the guys who served in the war, but that they changed, and I don't want to say it's negative because it worked for them at the time,
Right.
but it's not who we originally were, and it's not who we're meant to be. We're meant to be an exclusive organization.
I agree.
Yeah. And if you look at, I'm the wrong guy to be asking these questions. I'm like the historic nerd of the Grand Lodge of Texas, but when you see the rate of petitions go down, we also see the rate and the percentage of blackballs and rejections follow that in kind. It's crazy that we had 1 year. I'm not going to say what year it was, but we've had 1 year in the last 30 years where there were 0 rejections recorded in the state of Texas, which means every person who petitioned a lodge got in, and that just blows my mind.
Right. Yeah, the investigative committee. I mean, I don't know what that number would be, but yeah, that's especially with the amount of member. Yeah, I got lots of opinions about that. I'll keep it to myself.
I mean, even if you look just a standard distribution bell curve, you ought to have about 6% that just truly don't conform, period. So at a minimum, we ought to have about a 6%
somebody there
rejection rate.
doesn't believe in a supreme being.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, it's not proportional the way it used to be.
That's fair. What do you think? What do you think the biggest headwinds Masonry has? What are we walking into? What are our biggest headwinds?
Cultural shifts with just civilization in general. I think as society is moving towards more inclusivity, I think we're going to struggle to move against the grain to be exclusive the way we used to be. I think we'll achieve it, but I think it's going to have some growing pains with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think part of the problem that I see in UGLE, they're doing something that I'm about to lead into in California. I think that instead of us being more exclusive, they're trying to go more inclusive. And I don't want you to comment on this for lots of reasons, but I think that's where the conversation about women in masonry are coming. And it's not for me, but we'll go to the next question. I'm going to
touch that. Just
All right.
for at the conference of Grandmasters of North America this year, uh, there was actually a presentation on women masonry at the Grandmasters conference. That just tells you that it's not just on the horizon; it's here. And I'll stop it right there.
That's good. That's probably good for both of us. So there's no such thing, but if you are granted a magic wand for masonry and you could boom, wave it, and one thing that you could boom, it would change it instantly. It doesn't even have to be realistic. What would you want that magic wand to do tomorrow?
To take away denim,
Take away what?
denim.
Uh, I got that same feeling.
Yeah.
Yes. So if I'm understanding correctly, the days of when our grandfathers used to work in the fields, get out of the field, come home and shower, and put on their suit to go to the lodge has changed.
Yes.
That also, I believe, has diminished the brand because there have been plenty of studies with call centers. And I know somebody say, we're not a call center bird, but hear me out. Call centers, there was a time where the call centers weren't being very productive. Well, they could wear whatever they want, sweats like the damn Walmart attire. They did some big studies where they made everyone come at minimum business casual and another sample come in a suit. The productivity went up 2 to 5 fold when people came dressed for work. Their productivity changed. I believe in lodges when the attire started to get relaxed, the organization started to get relaxed, and probably the way we handle business got relaxed. My opinion, your thoughts?
I'm right there with you. It's My granddad was a welder. He worked for a rail car company, Trinity Rail Car, and he would get off work, go home, shower, and put on a coat and tie and go to lodge. He did that in Grand Prairie, Texas, and then he did it whenever he moved out to East Texas and Longview. Whenever I joined lodge in '03, they were blue jean and polo shirt kind of guys.
Okay.
Whenever I was master, I started wearing a coat and tie, and it's interesting that uh, just by me doing it, not saying anything, other folks started not necessarily wearing a suit, but they throw on a sports coat with their
They
jeans.
stepped up their game.
They did, and then it's just interesting. And when you act professional, when you dress professional, I think you act professional. When you act professional, things just happen to fall into place better.
There's nothing like putting your feet through some starch slacks, getting that starch shirt put on, putting that jacket on. It's like, man, I feel good.
And then you
There's
get the
something about it.
guys, and I'm going to catch hell for this, but you got the guys who are going to say, well, it's the internal, not the external. And I have to tell them, I'm sorry you feel that way. But if you look in our statutes, our code of laws, our bylaws, or even our ritual, nowhere does it say that. It just says that the internal is what we look at whenever we're deciding whether or not you should be a Mason. That's not, once you get in, you still should have to meet minimum expectations. Now, this goes back to the elitist comment you made a little while ago, and it's not elitist, it's exclusive. We are supposed to be an exclusive organization for men.
Yep.
And where men act like men and gentlemen.
Yep. I agree. So before we get to the most important question of the podcast, dancing girl, full disclosure, I let Jim know off camera that I was going to do him dirty.
He did.
Full disclosure, sorry about that. Right worshipful duty. He may have helped me out on this a little bit. So I'm going to put 4 things up on the screen. One of them must go forever. And I'm going to put 4 Grandmasters of Texas. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, please do.
No, I'm not going to do that. So up on the screen, my friend, you are going to see 4 things. And this is rough. So you got masonry. You've got any long rifle, any long gun, Albert Pike himself, and a good old whiskey or bourbon. One of them has to go forever. It was never, and I could tell by the smirk on your face, I might have zung you a little bit. So you already mentioned Albert Pike, so I know that one's going to hurt you a little bit. So walk me through which one goes forever.
The whiskey does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty easy. How painful is that?
not really painful at all. It's uh, the way I look at this, Freemasonry is it's a passion of mine, and
It is
it's more than a passion. It's really become a
a
really
way of life.
significant part of who I am. Uh, my approach to Freemasonry, and everyone's is different. Some guys join for the charity aspect of it, some join for the social aspect of it. My perspective of Freemasonry, Albert Pike is a very integral part of that. So, in my opinion, you can't have Freemasonry the way I perceive it without Albert Pike.
Okay.
Firearms are protected by the United States Constitution, so they have to stay, period. So that only leaves any logical person would have to say it would have to be the whiskey, it would have to go.
I agree, and I know that was painful, my friend, because I love a good whiskey or a bourbon, and
We've
so
shared one before.
we've shared more than one before, and that's one of my favorite things to talk about. So, Jim, I know you're a busy dude. I appreciate you for jumping on. So, thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you real soon.
Ryan, I appreciate the opportunity and thank you again.